In 2015, I became burned out. One thing that I did to overcome it, just really starting to take care of myself, I decided to create the Burned Out Nurse Practitioner to really help nurse practitioners specifically with burnout. I was this past year able to scale over 6 figures. Coaching is tremendous. Like, it can really, really help, but you still need to put in the action yourself.
All right. Welcome to the Investing RN podcast. Today I'm with Josh as always, and we're joined by Erica D. We've been a nurse for 12 years, started off in Med-Surg, did a little neurotrauma, and then in 2020 got your NP, and now you're working at a critical access hospital doing some primary care, covering ER, which is more my neck of the woods. So that's cool. I actually worked with NPs in the ER and had a really good experience with that. So that's cool. Still working full-time as an NP, but also building a side hustle, which we're definitely going to get into today. And a lot of good tidbits of information that I saw on your Instagram. We're excited to have you and chat about some of this stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for all the education and content you guys do through Investing RN.
Yeah. Well, I know I kind of like just glazed over 13 years of being a nurse, but or 12 years, whatever it is. But yeah, is there anything else, like anything specific, I guess, that stands out to you throughout your 12-year journey through nursing?
Yeah, so I can kind of share a little bit like of my story and just how I got to this place. So in 2015, I became burned out. I was working as an RN at the time, busy acute care hospital, just started to feel, that mental, physical, emotional exhaustion, felt detached from my patients and even from myself. I was able to overcome that burnout. And then fast forward to 2020, when I was working as a nurse practitioner. As we all know, the pandemic was going on at that time. Nurse practitioner burnout was an issue, before then, but that just added fuel to the fire. So that time I decided to create the Burned Out Nurse Practitioner to really help nurse practitioners specifically with burnout. After working with the NPs, I quickly realized that charting was like the number one cause of lack of work-life balance, leading to nurse practitioner burnout. So that's when I started the nurse practitioner charting school. I help overwhelmed NPs implement the charting and time management tips to create that better work-life balance and stop charting at home. And so it was through that online side hustle that I was this past year able to scale over 6 figures, surpass my salary as a full-time nurse practitioner, and just really create more of an impact for my followers. So that's when I started doing nursepreneur business coaching and just teaching other nurses and nurse practitioners how to do the same thing.
Nice. I know I saw you mention nursepreneur on your Instagram a couple of times. I was like, okay, so this is a word because we've said it a few times.
Yes.
It kind of flows well too, so that's great. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably get into that. But one of the things I think that stands out to me is just how quickly you burnt out in nursing and like bedside nursing, because it was like, did you say you started in 2012 or 13?
13 is when I graduated with my BSN.
So, I mean,
2 years. And that was before COVID and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember 2000. I remember that time actually being an okay time to do nursing and like, but it was already, I don't know. I mean, I was in ER and it was already busy, and you were starting to see like a lot of this, like just oversaturation of the hospitals and just not really being able to put patients, like admit them and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure on the floor, you guys were feeling the other side of it, where it's like all the pressure to get them out. Meanwhile, you're probably overloaded. So what state were you working in at that point?
In Nebraska.
Okay. And do they have any kind of patient ratios or anything?
No. I mean,
Okay.
we had like, the normal ratios on the floor, but we all know that can go out the window when there's patients needing to be admitted.
Yeah. So what would you say like contributed mostly to that, burning out so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, there were, personal factors. I wasn't doing like the self-care, taking care of myself as I needed to in order to show up for other people, lack of boundaries. But then anyone listening to this can attest to the challenges, of working in healthcare and the hospital. You're expected to care for all of these patients, doing all of the tasks. Like, you barely get enough time to go to the bathroom, let alone, get a drink or eat something. And so it was just a lot of different factors kind of came together, and ultimately I was burned out.
So what were some of the first steps that you did once you started feeling the burnout? Did you just kind of let it simmer for a while, or were you kind of strategically trying to avoid it early on?
Yeah, so I didn't even know that I was burned out at the time. There was one day I was at work and I went into the break room for, our 30-minute lunch. That is never that long. And there was an article sitting on the table talking about compassion fatigue in healthcare workers. And I read through it and checkmarked like every single sign and symptom. So it was kind of at that moment that I realized that I was burned out and needed to do something about it. It was not like a quick, fix or like one thing that I did to overcome it, but just really starting to take care of myself, that self-care, exercise, making sure I had enough sleep, feeling my body, setting the boundaries, and just starting to do a lot of those things personally. And then that helped me to overcome the burnout.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been pretty common. The compassion fatigue, I think, is an interesting, I guess, term, because it is tough in our career, because you can't really just show up and, I don't know, you go to restaurants and these other places and you can always tell when people are having a bad day, but it's like in our field, it's almost like you can't have a bad day because you're dealing with other people who's having maybe the worst day of their life, is right. What a lot of people like to call it. So it is it just wears on you after a while.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Josh.
I mean, I had nothing good to say. I was just going to say that's where a lot of dark sense of humors start coming up, because you're just so jaded that, I don't know, nothing really even gets to you anymore.
I remember early on, like, one of the nurses I worked with was pretty jaded, and she was always like, I was always trying to be all like positive and everything. She's like, just give it a couple years. And like, unfortunately, sure enough, after a couple years, it was just like right there with the rest of them. But yeah,
Have you two been in burnout before?
Yeah. Different stages of it, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that brings up another question, because you were burnt out as a nurse and now you're an MP. I feel like that's a strategy for a lot of nurses that are burnt out, is more education or more money or something like that. I didn't really feel burnout until after I was already a CRNA. But what would you tell somebody who's looking towards either more money or more education as their way of getting out of burnout? Because I don't really feel like that's completely correlated. So what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, it won't work to just, like you said, go back to school or even find a different job. Like, you're still going to face a lot of the same struggles that you're facing. So that's why, really focusing on yourself and that like self-care and what you can control and, doing those things for yourself. I've worked with a lot of burned out nurse practitioners, and a lot of we can get into that whole conversation just as far as pay discrepancy and, more liability, more work, as an RN. And there's a lot of NPs going back to the bedside, to work as an RN because they've faced that burnout or some of those challenges.
Yeah, I think the pay discrepancy is huge, because, I mean, we interviewed somebody here who works in San Francisco area. And she is an NP, but she's working as a bedside nurse because she makes so much as a bedside nurse. And I know you mentioned $60 an hour as an NP, which, depending on where you're at, is not that much. I mean,
right.
As nurses in Northern California, which is where I live, are making way more than that. So to go back to school, get your NP, and then still not be making that much, I could definitely see that. I mean, I guess kind of to Josh's point, though, it's like, other than extra schooling or trying a new field, I mean, are there any other recommendations or things that you did to kind of help yourself out of that burnout or just kind of improve your life?
Yeah, I mean, it really started with like my personal life and, how I was taking care of myself and showing up in personal life. I did eventually change jobs. I mean, that wasn't the, sole thing that overcame my burnout, but it did help, and not having like a long commute and just being closer to family, which is important to me. I mean, those were like other factors as well.
So then as you got, I guess, so sorry, you said it's the burned out nurse. What was the name of
The burned out nurse practitioner.
Yeah, the burnout nurse practitioner. So how did that start?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really just in 2020 and seeing all of the burnout. The burnout was something that I overcame myself. And so I felt like I could be, that voice, be that support system for nurse practitioners who were facing burnout. So that's when I had originally started doing like one-to-one coaching courses, that sort of thing. I've kind of transitioned that, working with nurse practitioners to the nurse practitioner charting school. Because like I said, the charting was such the major cause of that work-life imbalance and burnout. So now I mostly run that and just do like coaching and courses, a whole bunch of different online ways to offer support and generate revenue.
While still being full-time in the hospital, it sounds like as
Yes.
well. Yeah.
Yep.
So give us the secret on how you're not burnt out, because sounds like you're doing quite a bit while maintaining your full-time position.
Yeah. So I would say the main thing for me has been I get so like excited and so passionate about helping nurse practitioners. And I went into healthcare, to make a difference in my patients' lives and to really, make that impact on the world. And as we've talked about, because of the burnout, because of the way the modern healthcare system is, I never found that, true, like reaching that passion. There's been patients that, are thankful and make you feel good about the care that you're providing, but something was missing. And so that's when, I realized I want to create a bigger impact. And that's what I can do through the nurse practitioner charting school.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's like, yeah, to a certain degree, we've all gotten into this because we like working with people and we like helping people. And it does feel like you're almost like bailing on I don't know, like abandoning your post, maybe. I don't know however you say it, just like giving up on the healthcare system, giving up on people. But yeah, by being able to support other nurses, it kind of gives you that same thing where you're helping people and then those people can help more people. But yeah, you mentioned something about being non-compliant and like how patients are so non-compliant. It's funny because as I was seeing that, I just had this guy the other day who came in pre-diabetic, but then when we checked his sugar was like full DKA. He was like blood sugar was like 1494. So we see plenty of the non-compliance within with our patient population. But how are you now using that as like a coaching tool for being non-compliant for nurses and nurse practitioners?
Yeah. So the non-compliant, just, from a nurse practitioner side, society, healthcare tells us so many different things. Nurse practitioners are only worth, $60 an hour. You have to stay in the same job doing the same thing until you're 65 and, can retire with like a mediocre retirement. Like there's just all these things, we're told to do things a certain way. And so when you think about it, being non-compliant, you're starting to question those things. And that's something that, when I started my online business, I started to question. I started out as a nurse practitioner with a good salary, but I realized I'm pretty much capped out. Maybe I'll get a raise here and there, but I'm not ever going to create, the financial freedom that I want for my family. And so, starting to question things as a nurse practitioner that maybe don't sit with you the best or are not going to help you reach your best life or, your future plans. But then also from a business standpoint. So the online business world is crazy. There's so many, coaches, people telling you to do things a certain way. You need to have these kind of offers. You need to do your marketing this way. And so also to question that, because if it's something that, doesn't fuel you up, doesn't sit with you well, then question that, figure out exactly what it is that you want in your business and your personal life. And so that's where, being non-compliant is just starting to question those limiting beliefs that are put on us, externally, but then also internally. So what are you telling yourself that is blocking you from achieving your best life?
Yeah. And I know I think you mentioned doing some high ticket business coaching, and we did some of that as well. And, I think Josh, going into it, Josh was definitely more open to it than I was. Cause for me, it was like, well, I know what we need to do. Let's just do it. But, we ended up hiring the business coach. And in our case, I think it worked out. We are no longer with that coach. But I think that for the time we had him, it was valuable. I think Josh can maybe speak more to that. But
yes, it was valuable.
That's it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I myself have worked, done different programs, worked with different coaches throughout my online journey. And it's incredible, like the transformation. If you work with someone who has been higher up than you are, they can give you different ideas. They can tell you what works, what doesn't work. Definitely, like working with coaches has tremendously helped my business in many ways. The thing that I realized was that ultimately working with a coach is not the only thing. Like you yourself have to implement, take the action, do the things, figure out, what you believe in and what you stand for. And that's where I know what post you're talking about, because, even though I paid a lot of money, I got a lot out of that program. But then I realized that wasn't the solution. That wasn't the thing that was going to get me to the next level in business. It was myself. And it was, the actions I was taking, the limiting beliefs that I was hanging on to. And so, it's coaching is tremendous. Like it can really, really help, but you still need to put in the action yourself.
For sure. Yeah. Hiring a business coach, it's not a way to do less work by any means. You still have to do a lot of hard work, but yeah, to Colin's point, it was very beneficial to us. It was a ton of money, but really in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that much money because we'll be able to make that back year after year after year after year moving forward based on the ideas and the strategies that he helped us implement in the year that we were with him.
Yeah. And there's a ton, like you can, Google, YouTube, you can find a ton of information out there on how to start a business or scale a business. But when you find somebody that resonates with you, what they are talking about, their area of expertise, how they're going to help you, you will already be ahead light years of where you would have been if you, just Googled everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know most people, their way for kind of justifying not doing some sort of a business coach is that there's so much free information online. And absolutely there is. You can find anything that a business coach will tell you, you can find it for free. But it doesn't mean the same thing when you're getting it for free. Just like YouTube, you can go on YouTube and find whatever you want. But if you have somebody like in front of you giving you that same advice that you paid good money for, there's a lot higher chance of you actually implementing it and doing what they're suggesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the accountability is huge. And I think in our case, it was, are you running this business by yourself?
I am. Yeah, I have somebody that does like edits my YouTube videos, but otherwise it's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in your case, it's like, I think that there's power in having a team that we've realized, because obviously, we can lift each other up, but it also creates a certain amount of drama. And our business is Josh and Jen, who are brother and sister, and Jen's my wife. So it's like, there's already some interesting dynamics in there.
Yeah.
So in our case with the business coach, it was good because we had this third party perspective who was able to come in and kind of sort out our roles and help us out there. But I could definitely see, if I was doing this by myself, to have that person that's there for you, that's like almost like your cheerleader and like holding you accountable to certain things, because on your own, it's easy to kind of get down on yourself and feel like you're not doing enough or you're not doing it right. So the mindset thing obviously is huge. And I think that's where the business coaches can help a lot.
And with what we're doing, we're putting a lot of work in and not seeing like a ton. Well, I mean, we are now, but like our first few years, we were doing a ton of work and not seeing a ton of growth or a lot of benefits from our hard work, I guess. And that was kind of something that helped us also. It's like we're building the foundation to take our business wherever we want it to go. But that foundation is, you don't see a lot of the results of building this foundation at first. And that was something that I know I struggled with a little bit, especially at first.
And to your point, like I think earlier we were talking about how you're doing this nursing thing, and it can be, 40 hours a week, and then you're coming home with charting and you're doing all this, spending all this time charting. But it's like, at the end of the day, at least you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever it is. But with the business thing, you're doing just as much work, and for a certain amount of time, you're not seeing any, returns for that investment that time investment you're putting into it. So how did you work through that and justify continuing on as I'm sure your time was very limited during that first period?
Yeah. When I first started, I think it was about 8 months before I made, any kind of money in the business, which
that's fast.
Sounds crazy. I know.
That's so fast.
But I just kept going and I kept showing up. And I think for me, it was just being in touch with the passion, with how I just had this bigger picture, and I knew this was going to work. I didn't exactly know how or when, but just remembering that overall vision for my business and myself. And that's kept me going. That, fuels you and keeps you going even when you're not making any kind of financial impact. And then also, just looking at working with nurse practitioners. At that time, I was still creating content and starting to talk about a lot of these things, and nurse practitioners would, comment or hit reply on an email and resonate with it and say, thank you for doing this. And so it was definitely those moments too that fuel you up to keep going.
Was there any negativity from anyone when you were starting out?
Yeah. I mean, there's always, I feel negativity within healthcare roles, just people that don't agree with, nurse practitioners or think we're not good enough, that sort of thing. I haven't gotten any negativity as far as burnout, because I think that's a lot of everybody, no matter what the role faces that. So there was some negativity though.
Yeah. I think it's hard nowadays because I'm kind of an older generation. I feel like I'm part of the older generation, even though I'm not. I'm a millennial. I hate to admit it, but I am. But it's I kind of have that attitude of all right, well, it sucks. You just do it. You just power through it because that's what you're supposed to do. But then I'm also on the other side of things where I can see it's okay, well, you don't have to be miserable. So it's been a bit of a tough thing for me as we're going through this process of, trying to make more for ourselves and, trying to highlight burnout and all that kind of stuff. Because I think my initial reaction would have been whatever, suck it up. But now it's okay, well, you don't actually have to be miserable. There's ways out of it. So that's what we're trying to create. As far as when it came time to start your side hustle, your business, I guess what were some of the first steps you did, and how did you know that you wanted to go that path, and what did you do to pursue it?
Yeah. So I hired a coach. I did a program. I had spent a few months, YouTubing and trying to figure out how to get this going. And then I purchased a program. I think it was $2,600 at the time, which was a lot of money. At that time, it was scary. I didn't know if this was going to work, but I went for it. And that kind of helped me lay the foundations, figure out a website, figure out your niche too, who you want to help and how you want to help them, helped you kind of create those first few offers and social media, that sort of thing. So I just kind of started, step by step, figured out all of that. And it was through the program that I had did that really kept me focused and not, jumping from here to there. So that definitely got me going. Through the years, I have done other programs. I have niched down. I have tried different things. I mean, that's part of business. You try things, it's going to fail. You try something different, you learn from it, and you just keep going.
So your step one was to buy a course that's supposed to help you figure out step two. Is that what
pretty much?
I heard you just say?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Well, I guess, how did you have the confidence in, because like you said, $2,600 is no small investment. I mean, that's a decent amount of money to invest in that. So I guess, had you done a bunch of research leading up to that? How did you land on that particular course, and how were you confident that that was going to actually get you where you needed to go?
Yeah. So I had found the coach that I worked with off of YouTube, and like she had different videos on, how to get started, like what it looked like to run an online business. And so that's where content marketing, you guys doing the podcast, like you're sharing with the world your area of expertise. And, if somebody vibes with you and believes in the same things, that's why people purchase. And so that's, really the first step that I took. I had kind of done research, looked at the website, looked at social media, looked at the other YouTube videos, and figured out, I'm just going to go for it. Like, I'm just going to take a risk, take a chance. Like I had said, I just had this like vision and belief that was so strong that, even if I would have started and failed, I wouldn't have called it a failure. Like I still, just learned so much from that process.
Yeah, one podcast I used to listen to a lot, Rod Cleef. He always calls them. He never says failure. He says they're all seminars. So
yeah.
Well, and with that failure, like, do you think that? I mean, I'm sure we've had failures along the way, as I think every entrepreneur.
Seminars.
Yeah, seminars. We've had many seminars. But do you think that the success or the seminars failures have been more impactful and as far as driving you forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's how you learn, and you won't learn that unless you try. And, just realizing that that's like part of business and learning, how to overcome that. You have a launch a product that fails and, nobody buys. Like that sucks, it hurts, you put so much time and energy into it. And it's okay, to feel that emotion, but then figuring out a plan, what did I learn from this? Do I need to improve my marketing? Do I need a different offer? Like, was I not, passionate and fueled about this offer in order to sell it to other people? You just have to go through and figure out what you learn from that failure and then learn how to build the business stronger.
And you're doing stuff now on YouTube, is that correct? Like outreach via YouTube?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel that I, produce the content and then share my offers or affiliate offers.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that's we put all our podcasts up on YouTube, and it was definitely if you look at our early videos, it's not.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not great. It's
Yeah.
I mean, that's assuming that you. I don't know. They've gotten better. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Well, they've gotten better, but also I've started to care less, I think, and maybe the less you care, the more relaxed you are, the better they come out. I mean, we've obviously invested in some equipment and stuff like that to make things better. But like early on, it was like sitting at the camera, and like everybody was always teasing me about how I just looked like a deer in the headlights, and I did. But did you find it hard to kind of get that going and feel comfortable to where now you can just hop in and record something?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you just have to take that first step and you just have to keep going because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to feel confident to show up on YouTube or Instagram and, just realizing that you're there to help somebody else. Like somebody out there is craving for your expertise and your help and your support. And so you're showing up for them. So you make it less about yourself and more about like helping them.
We wanted to ask about imposter syndrome because that kind of leads right into it. Because I mean, if you don't feel like you're an expert, then a lot of times you're too scared to talk about it. But honestly, just opening up yourself to conversation is kind of how everybody's going to learn the best. So what do you say about imposter syndrome and how to overcome that?
Yeah, so everybody struggles with imposter syndrome, even like I work a lot with nurse practitioners and imposter syndrome, and everybody experiences starting out. There's so many world-renowned surgeons or movie stars or, presidents who have talked about their own struggle with imposter syndrome. So just realize that like you're not weird. It's totally part of it. And then, just keep going. And like we said, just show up that first time and it's going to get better and you're going to build that confidence and you're going to know that you're creating a bigger impact than yourself.
I think it was relatively early on. Somebody that we know mentioned somebody that he knew who had heard the podcast and started underwriting some deals for real estate and was all excited about it. And it was pretty cool to hear that, because it does feel like a lot of times we're just kind of like on here playing or whatever. Because it's this weird thing where it's like you're not in front of the people that you're talking to, so you can't really, you don't know that it's actually helping anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear that it helps even one person, it's pretty rewarding. But nowadays with your work life and between the hospital and the business, what does your day-to-day look like? And you have a family, from what I understand?
Yep, I do. I have a husband and 2 boys.
Okay, so that's busy. That's very busy. So what does that look like, your day-to-day, as far as work in the hospital and then running the business?
Yeah, so I do have Thursdays off from my day job. I take call on Wednesday night, so I do have Thursdays off. So that helps. That's like my business day. But then I wake up early in the morning before my kids, so I get a little bit of work done. Then, sometimes late at night, that sort of thing. But usually wake up, get a little bit of work on the business and, exercise, get ready, go to my day job. If I have any time over, lunch break, I'll post on social media or something like that. And then the evenings are usually for my family, taking my kids to their activities and spending time with my family. So it's definitely not easy. But that's what I love about like online business is it can be flexible. If I were to go get a side job at an urgent care, like that would be very set hours. It would be weekends. It would be, long hours. And with the online business, it's more flexible and I can work on it, when it works best for my life.
I mean, it's definitely today, even my schedule's been kind of all over the place, but this week, Thursday is my business day off at home. And I was telling my wife this morning, I was like, it's so nice to be working from home today, not having to get up early in the morning to run into work. Mm-hmm. So that part of it is great. It can be never ending at times because there's no True. Clock in and clock out. Mm-hmm. So it always feels like if you wanted to work 24 hours a day, you totally could.
Yeah.
And that part of it's tough, but it's definitely rewarding. And as far as your business, like what does your client base look like now? Like how many people are you working with? And is that like a daily thing or is that a weekly? How does that work out?
Yeah. So through like the NP charting school, I have a course, like a self-study course, where nurse practitioners can come and learn the charting tips. I used to have I do some coaching in there, not as much as I used to, but then I also have like low ticket. I have affiliate marketing that I do. So that's how I, generate money through there. The nursepreneur coaching is a little bit newer, so I don't have, as many clients through there, but building a membership for that. And then going to start with some one-to-one coaching. And then, we'll see where that goes, whether I do courses or masterminds or, I'm just kind of going with the flow and seeing what sticks.
And you said now you're up to 6 figures outside of the hospital. So at what point would you maybe cut back on the hospital and do this full time, or at least more than the hospital?
That's a good question. I don't have like a set, dollar amount or anything. I would eventually go part-time through the hospital. I love the variety. Like I love my job. I don't, there's challenges. There's times when I wish I could have a little more flexibility in my day job. But there's also a lot of positives too. And so I love doing both for right now. We'll see, in the future if part-time or PRN or something like that.
So after you replace your earned income, I guess, Colin kind of just asked that, but like at what point would spending an extra 40 hours in your online business would be like even more beneficial to where it rocket ships? Or are you just so tied, you enjoy working in the hospital so much, you're like, I could never leave this?
Yeah. I mean, I do love my job, in the hospital, but I also think that through the online business, like you don't need a lot of time. Like, are there things I could do with more time? Yes, but you can also get into the indecision fatigue. You could also, spend time on things that didn't really matter. And so where I have such a short amount of time, I'm very focused on what's the priority. What do I need to do? It's that Parkinson's law that the activities fill the time allotted. So, if I had 8 hours in a day to do a podcast interview or some, YouTube or creating some content, it would take that whole time. And where I have such short amount of time, I'm like very focused on what I need to do. And then also having, I don't want to say passive offers, but I mean, it's flexible, how I'm like spending my time or creating that content. And so I'm still, generating money when I'm not physically, working on the business because I have the system set up, because I have the offer set up. And so, it's kind of a mix and just realizing what works for you, and still create that passive income so that you can still work, part-time or full-time in healthcare if you choose.
How are you prioritizing? Like, do you have a system? Do you like every morning get up, or are you planning it out week by week?
I don't have a really good system. I should have something really fascinating to share with you, but I just kind of like at the beginning of the week know I need to create, 2 posts for Instagram, 2 reels. And so I kind of start, that I batch a lot of things. So when I'm doing like blog posts, I'll, write out 3 or 4 of them and schedule them out. When I'm recording for YouTube, I did that this morning. Like I did 5 different, videos, recorded those. And then luckily I send those off to my editor so she can take care of the rest. But that kind of just helps me focus on one thing at a time, get that accomplished, and then I can, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think we're gonna get into the final 5, but I was just gonna ask, can you break down how a 401k works before?
No, don't ask me that.
That's fine. I mean, we always tease about the 401ks because full transparency. Like I didn't understand much about my 401k, which is why when the opportunity presented itself to cash it out and buy more real estate, I was like, yep, let's do it. So yeah, not our favorite strategy, but it definitely works for some people. So
yeah,
we encourage all forms of investing.
Yeah.
Well, it works for most people. I mean, can we say all people? It works for all people. It just works slower than we wanted it to work for us.
Right.
So
now I think now where we're at, like I would open one up if I'm per diem right now, so I don't have that opportunity. But if I did, I mean, do the minimum to get the hospital match and just throw that.
Well, you can through your business too. I mean, that's always a option.
Yeah, that's eventually.
But when we can put it in real estate still.
Yeah,
true.
No, and we will get to the point soon where it's like we're going to have to start diversifying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But right now we're just all in on real estate.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Josh, you want to kick us off?
Yes. So our first question. So what's a top financial resource that you found? Like, where do you go if you're trying to learn something?
So early on, I was total Dave Ramsey, like, paying off the debt, getting control of your finances. And I feel like I've outgrown that now. He doesn't necessarily talk about like investing or investing well. So I listen to the Money Guy show on YouTube. They have some really awesome videos and resources to teach you kind of that advanced level of investing.
Second question is, what advice would you give yourself as a new grad?
Oh man. I'm trying to think. You guys stumped me on that one.
It could be anything. It doesn't have to be like financial. It could just be anything. Like make sure you get your breaks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't come back early from lunch.
Yeah. I think just maybe start to think outside the box, start to be non-compliant sooner than I did, as far as it's okay to build a business, it's okay to not be stuck in your day job for the rest of your life. Just to kind of start that financial journey that I've been on a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, because whatever you're going to do, it's going to take a lot of time. So like getting started as soon as possible. That way, that way you can see the results faster. That's kind of something that we did. Like we bought our first real estate deal in 2020. We're in 2025 now, and like we see some money, but it's not nearly as fast as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
There's too much out there that makes you think it's just going to be easy and quick, and it's not. So definitely the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah,
and stick to it. We struggle with shiny object syndrome for a little bit.
Yeah, well.
Me too.
All right, number 3. So, what excites you about the next 12 months?
I think just the thoughts around my business, the strategy, the things that I was doing to get me to that like first 6 figures. I'm having to be non-compliant with some of that, to really, right now I'm working more so on myself. And because that's such an important factor, that like personal development, the mindset that we talked about, that sort of thing, as far as getting to the next level of whatever it is, life, business, whatever. So just like the belief and the trust, my business will be where I want it to be in the next 12 months. So that's exciting.
Yeah, that feeling is like, I don't know. There's just something to it, I guess, because Josh and I have both kind of we just have a feeling about this. It's going to work out, and sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it does, and if you just stick with it, I think
we've never been wrong.
Not on a larger scale.
It's just taken longer than we thought. We're like, oh, this is going to work now, but no, actually, it'll work, just not right now.
Yeah.
So the 4th question is, how do you define success?
These are some really hard questions. I would say I define success by living my best life, unapologetically me, not taking into account other people's opinions or, what they think I should be doing, just to really feel, best as my true self and to live the life that I want to live.
Sounds like success to me. So
before not being told what to do, Josh loves that.
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's a different tangent. But so before I ask the 5th question, so I don't know if we actually went through a step by step, because your Instagram tagline is helping nurse practitioners scale their online hustle past 100,000 while working full time. So if I wanted to start a side hustle right now and I want to make an extra 100K per year, what would you tell me? What are some first things to do?
Just get started and figure out, what niche. I think the more specific you are for your niche, like who you want to help, how you want to help them, put yourself out there, start creating the content, start offering, coaching is kind of a easy way to get into it. And that helps you to figure out what struggles your ideal client is facing. And then you can kind of start to, build courses around that or a membership or that sort of thing. So definitely just getting started, talking about it. People need to know that you have a business or that you're offering, the coaching or whatever it is. So those are kind of a few easy steps to get started. I shouldn't say easy, but a few steps.
And it sounds like you have to be either well-educated or already an expert on some sort of subject that other people might want to learn more about or join. It sounds like maybe you're saying figure out what you think you could teach the best. I'm assuming this is all online that you're suggesting.
Right. Yeah. And figure out, ask people around you what you're good at, what do you enjoy to do? What could you do for an entire day and like just lose time in? It can be literally anything. Like there's coaches for like underwater basket weaving or, there's just like coaches and support content for like literally anything. So you can choose exactly what you love because that passion is going to fuel you to keep going and to, keep working on it when you're not making any money and to just keep showing up.
And this is me just kind of brainstorming right now, but kind of thinking of something that you can make a lot of content on as well, because the biggest way for people to find out about you is on social media and other media outlets, and something that might be interesting for other people to watch as well. Because if you're just talking about underwater basket weaving, I mean, maybe I just don't know anything about it, but I feel like I would run out of content.
YouTube videos. Oh no. If you know your niche specific enough, you will never run out of content.
That's very good. Very good point.
Yeah,
that's true. Okay, sounds good. So I will jump to the fifth question here then. So what is the biggest financial mistake that you've made, and what did you learn from it?
I mean, I've definitely made mistakes, and I never regret, any of them, because I have definitely learned from them. I think maybe just not starting sooner. When I was going through NP school, I was not like investing in, a 401k. Like, I've always been financially conscious. Like, I've never really overspent or anything, but I didn't realize that you can create more money, to help you build this time freedom and financial freedom. And so I think I missed out on a lot of years of not, starting that process. So it's just not starting sooner.
Yeah. That's a pretty common one, because again, it's just, like the sooner you start, the better. And I think most businesses, take about 10 years. So if you're 21, by the time you're 31, you could be set pretty well. So yeah, get out there, get started. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so the best place is Instagram, Burned Out NP. That's also my website, burnedoutnp.com. I have a membership, the non-compliant nursepreneur membership, that I, provide education, support, community for nursepreneurs who are really looking to start questioning those limiting beliefs that are keeping them safe and holding them back.
Nice. I think Josh
I apologize that the way Colin said that is like, where can people find you? I don't know why that just sounded.
I knew when he started laughing, I was like, oh man, I don't know why I just yelled that. but that's, yeah. So we'll link all that so that people can find you in a non-creepy way to reach out and get some coaching and some help.
Yes.
But yeah, it sounds like a lot of value out there, especially for NPs. So I'm excited for people to link up with you.
Yeah. And are you focused mostly on NPs, or would you bring in a CRNA or an RN?
Yeah. RNs and NPs. I just know, where I'm at in my life, the struggles that nurse practitioners face within the modern healthcare system. So that's why I kind of talk a little bit more, as far as the struggles. But yeah, I mean, nurses, nurse practitioners, nursepreneurs.
Yeah. Nice.
Sounds good.
Well, thank you for coming on today. This has been great. And we look forward to seeing where you go in the next 12 months.
Thanks for having me on.